Okay, Be'ezat Hashem, let's get started, Chaver. We're holding Yud Bet Amud Bet in Kinyan Hamesechta, Masechet Taanit. Everybody looks inside. Yud Bet Amud Bet. It's the third line on the page. Amar Rav Kahana Amar Rav. Everybody see that? Amar Rav Kahana Amar Rav. Yeshcha? Yud Bet Amud Bet. 12b. Yud Bet Amud Bet. Yud Bet Amud Bet. Yeshcha? Good. Alex got it. Good. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is this idea. We've already discussed this concept many times. We have fasts that are considered more strict and fasts that are considered less strict. So we know this for sure. Tisha B'Av, right? Tisha B'Av, what is the chumrah of Tisha B'Av?
Starts from the night before.
Starts the night before. What else? You're not only not allowed to eat and drink, what else? Wear leather shoes. Melacha is asur. There's different things that are asur. Right. Tisha B'Av. Yeah. Officially. Officially. There's leniencies. Yeah. We're not going to get into it right now. Yom Kippur.
Yeah, that's what I get.
Chumrah. Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur are the stricter fast days. Like you said, they start the night before, and you're not allowed to wear leather shoes, you're not allowed to do melacha, you're not allowed to put on cream. There's different things that are also prohibited other than just achila v'shtiya. As opposed to asara b'tevet. What's the halacha asara b'tevet?
You only start from early in the morning.
Start from the morning.
And,
You can't eat and drink.
Yeah.
In general, that's the rule.
It work. People go to work.
They'll go to work. But now, what we're talking about in our sugya is the fast that the Chachamim used to make if there was a rain shortage. So we actually spoke about the first set. There's actually 3 sets of fasts that they would decree if there was a shortage of rain. So the first set, we said when they would decree it, we know it would only start the next morning, it wouldn't start the night before. But as the rain continued to not come, meaning when there was still lack of rain, and they decreed the second and third sets of fasts, we're going to see, then it got more severe. Right? Then things got more severe. So what we're going to show here, and this is really based on a memra of Shmuel that we had earlier. Shmuel told us in Bavel, the only fast days that had these chumrot, like you're not allowed to wear leather shoes, they begin the night before, is Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur. That's what Shmuel says. The other ones aren't like that, which means they didn't actually have these rain fasts, the later ones, and Tosafot said the reason is because they didn't have a shortage of rain, really. Meaning, in Bavel it was a low-lying area, it was like Miami, so it was very moist, it was a wet area, they didn't have these issues, so they didn't have chumrah fast days like Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur. Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur were the exceptions. Usually, the other fast days in general were the lighter level fast days, which, by the way, is like we do today in Miami because we follow the minhag of Bavel. Okay, we're going to see that when we get to the halacha, God willing, but that's the idea. Now, Eretz Yisrael, it might be different, because Eretz Yisrael, when there was a shortage of rain, they decreed fast days, and those decrees eventually could lead to a situation where they had, starting in the day before, chumrot of not wearing leather shoes, etc. So if everybody looks inside now, Yud Bet Amud Bet, the third line, Amar Rav Kahana Amar Rav. Rav Kahana Amar Rav says as follows: Yachid shekibel alav ta'anit. If an individual accepts a fast on himself, asur b'ni'ilat sandal. He's even prohibited in wearing leather shoes. Now, 1 second. If a yachid accepts a fast on himself, is a lighter fast or a heavier fast? You'd say it's a lighter fast, right? So 1 second. Why would he be prohibited in wearing leather shoes? So says Rav Kahana Amar Rav, the reason is chashinan, we suspect shema ta'anit tzibur kibel alav. Maybe he accepted a ta'anit tzibur on himself. Meaning, he didn't specify what type of fast he was accepting on himself. Maybe he meant to accept the higher level fast on himself because he wasn't clear. So therefore it's a chashinan, it's just a suspicion. It's not maybe, not for sure. And therefore he has to keep the chumrot because maybe that's the type of fast he meant to accept on himself. So the Gemara says, well, if we want to avoid this situation, what are we supposed to do? And we actually saw this in the halacha already. So what should he do to avoid that situation? Amar Rabba bar Rav Shila le'mahachi. He should say the following. Meaning the day before we said he accepted in mincha. What should be the nosach that he should say? He should say lemachar, tomorrow, I am accepting an individual type fast on myself. What is the definition of an individual type fast? means a lighter level fast. So if he specifically says, I'm only accepting an individual type fast on myself, it means that he's permitted to wear leather shoes, it only starts the next morning, etc.
Can he accept that more severe?
You could. If you specify that. Now we learned in Halacha, we already saw this already, is that we take it for granted, since in Bavel they didn't have these more strict fast days other than Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur, we assume when you accept a fast day, probably you mean the lighter one. But in Eretz Yisrael, for example, where they had the heavier ones, so there is an argument to be made. Maybe that's what he meant, because that's what they were familiar with. Okay. Bavel, we're going to see ultimately, we seem to paskin, this is not a problem. Even if you say, I'm just accepting a fast, the assumption is you mean the lighter level fast, because that wasn't the common thing in Bavel. We'll get to that soon. Now the Gemara tells us, Amr le Rabbanan le Rav Sheshet. The rabbi said to Rav Sheshet, I don't understand. We see that the rabbis in Bavel, as we're about to show, they used to wear shoes. Means they used to wear shoes to the house of a fast day. When they accepted the later fast days for the rain, the way you're saying it, those later fast days seem to be even prohibited in the higher level things, including leather shoes, and the rabbis wore those shoes. So the rabbis said, the Chachamim said to Rav Sheshet, how could they do that if you're telling us that there's a chumrah on those later fast days, the second and third wave of those rain fast days, how could they wear leather shoes? So Amr le Rabbanan Rav Sheshet, the rabbi said to Rav Sheshet, Ha-ka-chazinan, but we see Rabbanan, the rabbis, they wear their shoes, v'atu lebeit Taanit, and they come for the fast days. How could they come for the fast days if what you're saying is the higher level chumrah exists in Bavel? How are they allowed to do that? So Ikbar, Rav Sheshet got upset. Why did he get upset? I'll explain in a moment. Va'amar lahu, and he said back to the rabbis, Dilma mechal nami achol, maybe they also eat? Now this is like a sarcastic thing. What is he saying? He's saying like this. There is an opinion of Shmuel who says, in Bavel, you don't keep these later fast days of the rain on the higher level. Maybe the rabbis side with him, but I don't hold that way. I hold those later fast days do have a chumrah. You're not allowed to wear leather shoes. So he responded sarcastically, saying, they think they're allowed to do that, maybe they should be allowed to eat as well. The way Rashi says it here, Rashi says, Uporshim midarkei tzibur. Rav Sheshet was saying they're separating from the public way, from the way that people should act. V'let le de Shmuel. Rav Sheshet didn't hold of Shmuel, but says Rashi, Va'anan ha'idna na'aginan k'Shmuel. We paskin like Shmuel. We'll see in a moment. Shmuel himself holds in Bavel, and therefore in Miami also, the only chumrah like that level is Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur. But Rav Sheshet didn't hold that way. He said, I don't paskin that way. So if they're going to go in shoes, they might as well eat also, because that's asur. Fine. Now the Gemara is about to tell us a few examples of rabbis who didn't wear shoes in the normal way, but they did wear shoes. So they were machmir on themselves, we'll see in a moment, that they didn't take off shoes altogether. So they didn't treat these fast days with the chumrah of the Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur. But they also, when they did wear shoes, they wore it in an irregular sort of way, in an unnatural sort of way. So it wasn't comfortable like a normal situation. That's what the Gemara, they did something in the middle in terms of the psak. So the Gemara tells us, Abaye v'Rava ma'ayli ki mesaimi apanta. Abaye and Rava would go to a fast day when they were wearing apanta. Apanta is the upper part of the shoe. So they would wear the top part of the shoe, like the top over the foot, but not the bottom part of the shoe. I guess it could probably be like some sort of a slipper of sorts. So they wore it in that way so that, because we do know that there is opinion of Shmuel who says altogether you're allowed to wear shoes, but they didn't want to be so lenient, so they wore shoes, but only the top part, not the bottom part. Marei Mar Zutra, Mechalfi diyamina l'smola, d'smola l'mina. Marei Mar Zutra swapped their shoes from right to left and left to right. So they wore their shoes on the wrong feet. Because this way it's not as comfortable as usual, so it's a chumrah, but it's not completely wearing shoes like normal. My 3-year-old sometimes anyways, at least she used to, wears the shoes on the wrong feet anyways. I guess you could do that. But again, it's the idea is that they're being machmir, but they're not wearing shoes outright, but they're wearing it in an unnatural sort of way. And the Gemara finishes off and says, Rabbanan devei Rav Ashi, the rabbis of the Beit Midrash of Rav Ashi, nafki kiorchayu. They went out in the normal way. It means they wore shoes in the totally normal way. Sabri, because they held Ki Hada Amar Shmuel, like Shmuel said that I just mentioned. Ein Taanit Tzibor beBavel. There's no public fast in Bavel with those chumrot of not wearing leather shoes and it's starting the day before. Ela Tisha B'Av Bilvad. Besides Tisha B'Av, and some add in on the side, and Yom Kippur. So those two fast days, the rabbis in Bavel said you have to keep the chumrot. They said like Shmuel, you have to stay away from shoes. Not only not eating, but also start the night before. But everything else, they said, even the later rain fasts, you don't begin the night before. You're allowed to wear shoes, and there's no such issue. So basically, we seem to have three levels of opinion. We have Shmuel's opinion, which is altogether the only chumrot, like those fast days, those stringent fast days, is Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur. The other ones, you can wear shoes, it starts only the morning, etc. We have a middle ground, which is they were trying to be machmir, but they wore shoes in an unnatural sort of way. The wrong feet, only the top part, fine. And then we have the machmir of Sheshet said, no, that there's chumrah, the other fast days, the later rain fasts, you should also conduct yourselves with those chumrot as well. And in terms of Pesach, we're going to check the Shulchan Aruch in a moment. But that is, the Kitzur, that's the story in the Gemara. What do you want to say, Eliezer?
No, I wonder how did shoes work back then? Like how did the shoes were produced?
How were the shoes produced?
Yeah, like I don't know. How was a shoe back then? I was wondering.
Yeah. I'm not sure it was so different. I'm not sure. Not sure it was necessarily so different, I should say.
Because you see that, I don't know, you have like this history clothing that you, like for example, it's very detailed how the Kohen Gadol, like he rose,
right.
what he used,
right.
Very, very specific.
Right.
So I wonder like if there's any specification of how like the shoes should be made.
However it was, this was clearly not a normal way to wear it. I mean, this was a shinui, this was not a normal way. Or they swapped their feet. I mean, you ever try putting it on the feet? It's not comfortable. Yeah. We're plastic. I guess that's similar. Same idea, really.
Was the theme to be uncomfortable? Like it's more stringent?
I guess so. Yeah. Meaning it's like a chumrah. Is really in Bavel you don't have to not wear shoes for those other fasts, like Shmuel says. But they were machmir on themselves to some degree, so they were, but in an unnatural way, it sounds like, yeah.
Why the shoes, you understand?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's one of the chumrot, that's the point.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
So, like, what is, because today we have this, like, it's very, shoes, I don't know.
Shoes make you comfortable.
Exactly.
Yeah, I hear.
That's the idea, you're not supposed to be comfortable.
Yeah.
You gotta suffer.
Yeah, you want to go grab some Mishnah Berurah Chelik Vav? Want to grab a couple of them to bring them over? Thank you. In the library. Yeah, we'll bring a few. Shkoya, thank you. Let's go through the Halacha. Very, very interesting. We're going to talk about the difference between Bavel and Eretz Yisrael, and then we'll see how it comes out, Tachlis, in terms of Miami. It comes out. Yeah. Is there a rabbi? Which rabbi?
כן, בתשע. בתשע יש בערים.
Yeah, I know that rabbi.
He's the rabbi, you know, a babysitter, this guy. You know, you say come for a week. Then it becomes 2 weeks, then my accountant want to come.
Yosef, you're a tzaddik, that's all I have to say.
And then he said, I asked him, listen, I just want to ask you, will be here for Shabbat? He said, I'll be honest with you, I think I'll be here for 2 more weeks.
Yosef, you're number one, that's all I have to
You
say.
don't want to run around now because it's cold.
And he's comfortable over
I
here.
like it here.
You treat him well. Alright, let's look at the halacha, Chevra. The halacha is Siman Taf Kuf Samachet. Let's take a look at this first. Taf Kuf Samachet. Alex, maybe you could help Eliezer take a look at that. You found it? Yishcha? Taf Kuf Samachet.
468.
568. Seif Vav. Yishcha? Seif Vav.
Chacham, man. Chacham.
This is wrong. that's right. Taf Kuf Samach. Oh yeah, Taf Resh. The wrong one. Taf Kuf Samach. Ivav, right there, top of the page. Yeah. You got it?
You want this one better?
It's perfect. Se'ivav. Everybody look at Se'ivav. Let's see what he says over here. In terms of psak. Okay? Ein Taanit Tzibor beBavel. The Shulchan Aruch tells us there is no public fast day in Bavel. Le'aser b'melacha, in order that you need to stop work. Or la'afsik meba'od yom, and to stop eating the day before, means while it's still day. Ela Tisha B'Av bilvad. Besides for Tisha B'Av. Now Yom Kippur also, but that's the Drabanan, these the rabbinic ones. Ilkach, therefore, Yachid shekibel alav Taanit. If an individual accepts a regular Yachid, a fast on himself, Lo Chashin an Shema Taanit Tzibor kibel alav. We don't have to suspect that he meant to accept a more chamor type fast on himself, because what is he usually engaged with? The lighter level fast day. So mistama, that's what he intended. Umutar bikulan, and he's permitted in all of these things. Means allowed to wear shoes. He only stops eating the next morning, etc. Umikol makom, but says the Shulchan Aruch, nonetheless, lechatchila tov lomar. It's better to say b'shat kabbalat ta'anit, at the time of accepting the fast, hareini b'ta'anit yachid lefanecha machar. That to emphasize, I'm accepting an individual's fast on myself, so that it's not mistaken for being public. But even if you didn't, even if you said I'm accepting a fast, the assumption is you mean to accept a lighter level fast because that's what you usually engage with in Bavel. Now according to this Shulchan Aruch, if you accepted a fast without specifying in Israel, what would be the halacha? What would you think logically? Maybe you have to keep in Israel. In Israel. The stronger, maybe you have to keep the higher one. So let's see now what the Mishnah Berurah says. Everybody look at the Mishnah Berurah, Sif Katan. The difference, the Tosafot already told us, in Israel they had shortage of rain and they would fast on these levels. In Bavel they wouldn't have these fast days, so the general fast they engaged with was lighter level fast. So Mistama, when somebody accepts Taanit Yachid, that's what he means, even if he doesn't say clearly. But in Israel, maybe since they work with that should be something they have to keep. More in trouble. It's hard to live in Israel. It's not easy. Halavai, we should all live there, but that's... Now look at the Mishnah Berurah, Sif Katan Lametet. Everybody see that? Yeshcha? Lametet. It's about here. You got it, Eliezer, there? It's the three lines in the first column. Let's see what Mishnah Berurah says now. Ein Taanit Tzibor beBavel v'hu adin b'kol chutz ha'aretz. This is important. This is the same rule for all of chutz ha'aretz. Kedemuchach lekaman siman taf kuf ayin hey seif yud. We'll see that in a moment. Okay, so Miami is the same as Bavel. So accordingly, if somebody accepts a regular fast, Taanit Yachid on himself, we assume even if he doesn't say Yachid, he says I'm accepting a fast, he probably means a lighter level. Hilkach Yachid shekibel lev Taanit lo chashinan b'chulei. Milashon zeh mashma. So the Mishnah Berurah says from this it implies that Eretz Yisrael, that in Israel, im kibel alav Taanit stam, if somebody accepted a regular fast in Israel on himself, Chashinan Shema Taanit Tzibor Kibel Alav, we suspect maybe he accepted a Taanit Tzibor, a higher level fast on himself. V'tzarich la'afsik meba'od yom, he would have to stop eating while it was still day. V'asor b'mlachan, he wouldn't be allowed to do work, and he wouldn't be allowed to wear shoes, etc. But the Mishnah Berurah says perhaps today she'ein matzoi lihitanot ha'ta'anit hatzibor ha'mevoarim lekaman b'simin tafkuf ayin hesif gimel. We don't fast those types of fasts today. It's not found. Even in Israel, we don't fast those rain fasts with the bigger chumrot. We just don't do that today. Mistama kavanato astam ta'anit. We could assume Istama, he also means in Israel to accept a lower level fast on himself.
No, that even in Israel, even if they have the no rain, somebody take an Taanit. It's normally that you will take a regular Taanit.
It's normal, but the problem is maybe that's what he meant. So that's what we're trying to figure out. Maybe he's not even sure. He doesn't remember necessarily. So what the halacha stam would be in Israel, since they have those higher level fasts, maybe that's what he meant to accept. But Mishnah Berurah is saying, Kayom, today, we don't have those rain fasts with the higher level in Israel. So perhaps today if you accept the stam fast, you wouldn't have to keep it with a higher level. A logical thing to say. B'tzarech iyun, he says it needs analysis. V'ayin lekaman shams if yud masha katabnu binyan zeh. Now we'll see that in a moment. But what's the difference? So just I want to point something out. The Dirshu brings a footnote here which is important. He brings from the, we're going to see later from the Mishnah Berurah.
What is the Dirshu?
I have it on the side. It's footnotes. This type of Mishnah Berurah has footnotes on the side, which are very nice footnotes, very helpful. Kedai to know. Yeah. The Dirshu brings down the side from Harav Fisher. He says, today we don't have any of matzah. We don't have those types of fast days in Israel. We don't have those rain fasts. We don't have those types of fasts where you have the chumrot. So he says, based on that, logically, even lechatchila, you wouldn't necessarily need to say Harei arini alai machar Taanit yachid. It would be assumed that the fast you're accepting is a Taanit yachid, is a lower level fast by definition.
There's any restriction to do a Taanit today?
You could accept a fast on yourself.
There's no restriction. Like I can say.
You could accept a fast on yourself. But we're going to see, perhaps we'll get to it soon, that specifically they don't do rain fast today. It seems to be they don't do it today. We're going to get there in a minute. This type of fast that Chazal used to decree. Now flip over to Simin Tafkuf Ayin Hey, a few pages ahead. Tafkuf Ayin Hey, Seif Yud. This is what we're going to, the next point here. Tafkuf Ayin Hey. Just flip a few pages. See, Samach, Aleph, Ayin Hey. Go to Ayin Hey. You see? Good. Alex, you help me out there? Thank you. Ayin Hey, Seif Yud. Find Yud. Turn a page. Yeshcha? Okay. So listen to what the Shulchan Aruch says over here. Let's talk about Israel a little bit. Any fast that is decreed on the public in chutz la'aretz. So the standard rule. You see, Eliezer? You got it? Any fast that is decreed on the public in chutz la'aretz, in the diaspora, outside of Israel, you could eat at night. Meaning you only start fasting in the morning. V'dinam kedin sha'ar ta'aniyot. It's like regular fast days, like Asara b'Tevet. It's not like Tisha B'Av. She'ein gozrim ala tzibur ta'anit kegon tzom kippurim, because we don't decree fast days like tzom kippurim, like Yom Kippur, ela be'eretz Yisrael bilvad u'beglal hamatzar. Only in Eretz Yisrael, because of the lack of rain. Uba'otem eser ta'aniyot shehem shalosh emtza'im b'sheva acharonot. And those 10 fasts, which are the 3 middle and the 7 last ones, those are the 2 sets of rain fasts that we haven't talked about in the Mishnah yet. Those were decreed in Eretz Yisrael. But in Chutz La'aretz, we don't engage in those. So therefore, a fast that's decreed in Chutz La'aretz, you could eat at night, it only starts the next morning, there's no Isur Melacha, etc., other than Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av. That's a very natural thing. Taf, Kuf, Ayin, Hey. Ayin, Hey.
Oh, how much?
You're in the wrong place. Ayin, Hey. Taf, Kuf, Ayin, Hey.
Why do they have to pay number?
Taf, Kuf, Ayin, Hey is
Well, I just 50.
Here, yeah.
Next time I will bring back one in.
Now let's see the Mishnah Berurah. Look at the Mishnah Berurah. He explains what's the difference between Chutz La'aretz or Bavel and Eretz Yisrael. So he says as follows: Chutz La'aretz, it's Sif Katan Chaf Hey. If you look in the Mishnah Berurah, Chutz La'aretz Chaf Hey 25. See that footnote? Yeshcha Yosef Chaf Hey in the Mishnah Berurah. Right there. Chutz La'aretz she'ein lahem nasi sheyigzor aleihem. In Chutz La'aretz, there's no nasi, leader of the generation like that, who they used to have to decree a fast day on themselves. It's very interesting, like a leader of the generation in that way. And in order to decree a public fast day with a chumrah like that, you have to have the nasi. Okay, that's what Mishnah Berurah says. So that existed in Israel once upon a time, but it didn't exist in Bavel, it doesn't exist in Miami for sure.
What about
Before it doesn't exist. Apparently it doesn't exist. On that footnote, just I'm going to tell you what Dirshu points out over here. He says, yeah, 1 second. Where is it over here?
For example, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein can decree
I don't know if he'll be Nasi. That's the point. He's not Nasi. You need Nasi. You need that position. Vida. Let's continue. Ta'achronim mistapkim afilu be'eretz Yisrael. Even in Eretz Yisrael, the Achronim wonder, im noheg hayom aseder ta'anit machmad zatan. Because of this reason, we don't have a Nasi in Eretz Yisrael either today. So based on that reason, we shouldn't have this idea of the Chumrah fast days for the rain, for example, in Eretz Yisrael either, because we don't have that today. Is maybe the representatives in Israel, they act as a continuum or a representation of the original Nisi'im, so maybe this idea of the Chumrah type fast could still exist in Israel. So what the Mishnah Berurah is telling us is, really, based on this logic, there's no Nasi, so you can't decree in Chutz La'aretz these rain fast, and you can't have, therefore, if a Yachid accepts any reason to assume it's a Chamor type fast, in Eretz Yisrael we don't have that either today. So if we don't have that in Eretz Yisrael either today, if somebody accepts on himself a fast day in Israel without specifying, probably what are we going to assume? It's a regular fast day. It's a very logical conclusion. It's a very logical conclusion to say. And there was a point there I think I wanted to point out. Second. Okay, I think that was pretty much it. Yeah. So basically, what emerges from what we just did was, it sounds like, for sure in Miami, which follows Bavel, Lechatchila again, if a person wants to accept a fast on himself tomorrow, he should say, Arei alai, Areini alai, the exact nusach, say it right. I'm accepting on myself a Taanit Yachid tomorrow. But even if you didn't say Taanit Yachid, that's what you mean, because you don't have Chamor type fasts outside of Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur. You don't have that in Miami, as reflective of the Minhag in Bavel. As opposed to in Israel, once upon a time there was an Nasi, they would decree these rain fasts which were Chamor, and they engaged in this. So therefore, if a person accepted a Stam fast on himself, there was reason to suspect maybe he meant the more Chamor type fast. But Mishnah Berurah is saying, Tachlis today, we don't engage in those rain fasts, in Israel too, and therefore there's good reason to assume, even in Israel, if he accepts, probably he doesn't mean to, even if you just say, Hareini mekabel alai machar ta'anit, you could assume that he also means Taanit Yachid, a lower level fast as well. That seems to be the Psak L'maisa that comes out. Okay, that's the end of that part.
Mishnah Berurah is will give you the bottom line.
Mishnah Berurah has the bottom line, at least for Ashkenazim, but usually it goes also. Sometimes there's distinctions, but usually it's very gives a good wrap up. A good wrap up. Yeah. All right, Chevra, we'll stop here. We'll pick up tomorrow, God willing. Tzat Hashem.